Hello again. There's a prelude to this emotive rhyme, so it'll take up a little more of your time, but I hope you'll stay for the duration of my righteous indignation. Now, I was born and raised in the country, and lived here most of my life, but when the Countryside Alliance claim to speak for me, it gives me mental strife. See, my dad was a farm labourer, the lowest paid job in the nation, and there was never a moment in his working life he was allowed to forget his station. But if he needed to shoot a rabbit or a pigeon or hook a fish once in a while, to feed his family he'd go that extra mile. Well, I'd support his right to do that. In fact, I'd take off my hat, because his knowledge and respect for nature were second to none, even if, to feed his kids, he sometimes carried a gun. Also, I defend the right of indigenous people to hunt on their ancestral turf, where for centuries they've lived in balance with reverence for the earth. Now, there'll be some exceptions to what I say, but I find I can't get through the day without making at least one sweeping generalisation about some irksome situation, so forgive me if you've been tarred by my brush's employment, and you're not guilty of killing for enjoyment. So, that said, here's my piece that offers me emotional release. For you, I hope it's entertaining enough to put up with my irksome huff, and you won't be too appalled. Anyway, here it is. It's called Our Proud Heritage. There's a grand old tradition, a truly noble sport, reserved for the gentry and those of their sort. Off into the landscape they keep so nice and neat, protected from trespassers and the tread of commoners' feet. With shotguns scatter, they shoot at living creatures. Blood and guts splatter all over nature's features. Their victims they call game, but it's not fair play when defenceless animals can't get away. For centuries this custom's been reserved for nobles and their friends, but now if you can pay your way, your means justify the ends. So, if you're fixing to be a vixen, free to roam the countryside, beware of toffs outriding eager for vulpicide. Drag hunts notwithstanding, they are demanding to watch hounds rip foxes to shreds, for no other reason than to fill their heads with gore and bloody the face of virgins, so they can grow up wanting more murder just for kicks, that fatuous bunch of pricks. And it's not fair if you're a hare, living on Highland moors. The heather you've always eaten is no longer yours. It's exclusively for grouse, so rich folk can blast 'em every time they go past 'em, but not until the massacre of hares by the score, by gamekeepers sure they're just doing their job, keeping pests under control, with no knowledge of the toll on nature, now or later. Let's face it, it's the pits to be a hare facing these shits. Think, how pleasant to be a pheasant deep in the Asian jungle. Not bred in a cage, fattened on corn, and then released and forced to be airborne, to be shot for a feast in a slaughter by those who shouldn't ought to be allowed to handle a gun, when their so-called sport is blood-drenched fun, and those invited to come have the right breeding and bank accounts far exceeding human need. Indeed, to be franker, they're a bunch of wankers. They poison the buzzard, poison the kite, poison the eagle, because they might just take a grouse or a lamb that doesn't belong here anyway. Don't you see it's wrong that alien species take precedence over what's adapted to this land over millennia, hand in hand with the plants and other creatures who should be our teachers? Not these resource suckers, they're a load of motherfuckers. Now, though blood is the prize, they call it sport. Some of it's illegal, but if you're caught, it's no surprise that a Masonic nod or a Masonic wink is all it took to get you off the hook. It makes you think that the laws are a farce, no matter if you're an arse or some aristocrat's brat who's a fuckwit and a twat. So don't sit on the fence, protest about it. It makes no sense when the rules are flouted, when those who make 'em are the ones that break 'em, and they're not enforced because ethics are divorced from a political process that perpetuates privilege for the prevailing elite, whose rule is not democracy but deceit, as they lie, steal and cheat, to feed greed that's never replete, and whose ancestors stole the land from the people by force of arms and called it poaching if the poor were encroaching on self-proclaimed estates and farms, and locked them up for having no income to pay taxes to keep them in riches. And now the time has come to stop supporting these parasitical sons of bitches. Let's take back the land and the power. Make a stand, knock down their ivory towers, return to the people what is theirs by right. Let's make it peaceful, we don't want to fight. There's more of us than there are of them, And though we may think their gobbets are phlegm, we should give them a chance to change their mind, because we want to live in a world where all are kind. Now, I know I've insulted a few folk, but I had to get it off my chest because hunting's no joke. And I really know it's best to approach everyone with love to promote true peace. And we must never cease to strive for justice and equality. But when those against us pour on scornful jollity, I reserve the right to call them what I feel in my ranty, animal rightish zeal. So I'll end on an insulting tone, and I know that I'll not be alone when I say that those who go out on hunts are just a bunch of sadistic cunts. That's all. Peace.